Hello, you're right. So this is your discussion video on the theme of power this week, and Miss O'Dowd and I are going to discuss two characters from the Tempest and discuss how they link to the theme of power. So I'm going to start off and I'm going to discuss Ariel. So if I have my slide here. Okay, so Ariel, just to remind you, he is a magical spirit. He works for Prospero, kind of as a slave. And Ariel's kind of Prospero's like eyes and ears for the island. He tells them exactly what's going on. He helps them with his plans, and he has magical powers. So you can see that Ariel has power in terms of magic. He actually is in control of a lot of other spirits on the island as well. So that's a way that you could say that Ariel has power himself. He's not a particularly voiceless character. He does speak and he does express issues such as wanting to be free from Prospero as well, even though he is under control by Prospero. So Ariel's beginnings, I found, was that Prospero actually freed him. He found him on the island. He found him caught up in a tree and he freed him. And as a result, Ariel said that he would work for Prospero. However, Prospero was to set him free in the end. And Ariel does remind Prospero that he is due to be set free in the end as well. So he does speak up in that respect as well. So Ariel's quite an interesting character in terms of power, because you could say he is a slave, like Caliban is, but in a sense he might have a bit more power in terms of the fact that Prospero kind of needs him a bit more to actually conduct his plans. So I've just picked out two quotations here. So the top one is from the start of the play. They're actually Ariel's first lines in the play, and I'll just read those to you. So, all hail, great master, brave Sir Hail. I come to answer thy best pleasure, be to fly, to swim, to dive into the fire, to ride on the curled cloud, to thy strong bidding, task Ariel and all his quality. Okay, so there's a few things that we could pick out here. So one of the ways I think Miss was saying in her video is that a way you can see power is through the pronouns that are used. So you might notice in this slide I've highlighted the word thy. Now thy is another way of saying your. So in this extract he's kind of saying to Prospero, whatever you need, I will do that for you. And using that pronoun your is kind of implying anything for you, I will do it. And that also is shown by the fact he calls him a great master. He addresses him as Sir. So it demonstrates that he does have some respect for Prospero and he'll kind of do what he asks him to do. Also, the next one is from towards the end of the play. So Ariel, towards the end, he does all of the work for Prospero, but in the end, he tries to manipulate him and make him see like his humanity to try and get him to convince him to free him, really. So he says, your charm so strongly works in that if you now beheld them, your affections would become tender. So you've still got the pronouns of your there, so like I'm doing things for you. But here, he's trying to manipulate him. So he's trying to say, look, you need to change your ways, and then as a result, he would have to free him. So you could say that in this relationship with Prospero and Ariel, that Ariel does actually have some power. While he is like a slave and he's being controlled, it could be a bit of a debate that without Ariel, would Prospero's plans even work? So I think you were saying as well before, Miss, in your video, that would Prospero's work if people weren't obeying him? So like he needs the other characters for his plans to actually work. So yeah, Ariel's a bit of an interesting one there. There's lots of different points you can make about power with Ariel, I found.
I think as well there is that sense of admiration that Ariel has for Prospero. Not only is Ariel under Prospero's control, there is kind of that willingness as well for him to be supportive of Prospero. He never challenges really any of his plans and conspiracies, but actually just supports him the whole time. which kind of shows that. But then there is the question of, you know, has he been re-educated in a way to kind of respect him to this level? But very interesting. Thanks, Miss Pierce. I'm also going to be talking about kind of another sort of minor character in the play called Miranda. Now, what I just wanted to focus on first is the different portrayals of Miranda, because as we know, the Tempest is meant to be enjoyed in a play and theatre environment. So it's really important that we as interpreters of this text also think about what directors have done with it, and how costume, how actors also demonstrate these character qualities of Miranda. There's some interesting variations here. Some of you may have watched the Royal Shakespeare Company adaptation, which is in the far left, where we see, for me, a very strong female character, and she does create moments of comedy. This centre image is interesting because it shows that Miranda's identity is actually one with Ferdinand, and she therefore can only really operate through the mouthpiece of men. And this final one here shows her to be quite isolated, as though she's kind of deep in thought and maybe not entirely happy. Interesting there that those directors have got a range of views about her. So I'm going to be questioning about how much power she really has. Miranda is the only female character in the play. It's a heavily male-dominated environment, and hopefully you would have understood in my previous video about the different types of power that exist within this play. But these things we do know about her. She's 15 years old, very young. She's grown up on the island since the age of 3, when the shipwreck occurred with her father, Prospero, and she's never seen any other men or women in all her time living on the island until she meets Caliban, and then there is that later shipwreck where we have Alonso and his noblemen. Which means that her character is one of deep complexity, and yeah, she's not just sort of seen to be a weak female character, in my opinion, which I'm going to show you now. I said before that she hasn't met any other women. That's manifested in this first quotation. I do not know one of my sex, no woman's face remember, save from my glass, mine own. Here we're seeing that Miranda is accepting the fact that she feels quite alone in this world, and therefore has no role models in order to bounce off of. In his second quotation, said by Prospero, he refers to himself as a schoolmaster, as though he is the teacher of Miranda and is therefore educated on the person that she has become. And for that reason, I guess he sees her as being deeply in favour of him and indebted to him, that she has to pay him back with her respect and her loyalty towards him. Even the way that Ferdinand speaks to Miranda is interesting. He says, "But you, oh you, so perfect and so peerless, are created of every creature's best." A lot of the male characters who have a relationship with Miranda appear to comment her as being almost like a prized possession that they have to get and keep. We can see here that Ferdinand is deeply marvelled by how beautiful she is. She's so perfect, so peerless. So this idea that there's no badness about her, there's no sense of evil within her. She's just this innocent and pure character that's been created as though maybe she is manipulated by the men around her. And this is echoed with Prospero, where he calls her his rich gift, which we can say is a metaphor here about the way that he sees his daughter as an object and a possession of his own, and therefore she is always under his command. In my research, I discovered this term, which I've touched on with my class, I think, about femme couverte. Now this, as you can see in the bullet point, was actually a common law in Shakespearean England, where a woman became the possession of men in her life. And because of that, it denied a woman any independence, and it meant that that the woman was passed on from father to husband, and she had kind of no say in that, and it was very arranged. Therefore, Shakespeare may be commenting that Prospero's own actions in the play really demonstrate this law coming about. Now, I'm just going to touch on this extract between Miranda and Ferdinand. I've kind of been arguing up until now that Miranda is under the influence and command of men. Yet this moment actually shows how powerful she really is. We see here that this is known as the log scene, and essentially Prospero has ordered Ferdinand to go and collect some logs, keep him busy as he's keeping an eye on him to find out if he's a suitable husband for his daughter. But as he's carrying the logs, he finds it quite difficult, and he's struggling physically to lift the logs, which is where Miranda steps in. And she says to him, "Pray, set it down and rest you. My father is hard at study. Pray now, rest yourself. He's safe for these 3 hours." Here she's advising Ferdinand to stray away from the orders of her father. We kind of see her disobeying her own father's orders, really. And to bring in some of the writer's techniques by having pray, set it down, and rest you, these are examples of imperative verbs, which are also known as bossy verbs as well. So she's kind of directly ordering him and instructing him to do as she asks of him, obviously for the sake of his safety. Ferdinand then replies and says, "Oh, most dear mistress." We can see here that he's kind of romanticising her, making her seem better than maybe the reality of what she is. He puts her on a pedestal and thinks that she's like this beautiful, amazing creature. Miranda responds to that, says, "Well, don't worry, like, you're obviously struggling to lift the logs. Pray give me that, I'll carry it to the pile." And this is quite a comic moment in the play where she picks up the logs and finds it so easy, and whereas Ferdinand's been struggling the whole time. Ferdinand says, "No, precious creature, I'd rather crack my sinews, break my back, than you should such dishonour undergo while I sit lazy by." We have here Ferdinand saying, no, I'm a man, I can't possibly allow you to do that. That would be so embarrassing. But she goes ahead and does it anyway and makes a mockery of him, really. So this is her kind of having that sense of power. And finally, we also see Miranda powerful in the way that she steers the direction of her relationship and marriage to Ferdinand. She very boldly asks the question of, "Do you love me?" She doesn't wait for him to make the advances. She then moves that question through into a marriage proposal. She said, "Well, I'm going to be a wife then, if you will marry me." So she's quite presumptuous. She kind of assumes that Ferdinand is going to say yes. And then once again, in this sort of like direct way, she goes, "Well, you're my husband then." So therefore, I think on the surface, we might be able to say, yeah, that Miranda doesn't have much power. She's the only female in the text. She doesn't say an awful lot or do an awful lot, but actually what she represents is far more complex. And we do see a beginning in her challenging of the gender politics in this play, in my opinion anyway. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. So any other comments on that at all, Miss Pierce?
I think that's really interesting about Miranda, particularly like what you were saying is the fact that she has no concept of the outside world apart from Prospero. So everything she knows is from him because she was born on that island. She's never been to where the other characters are from. So it's really interesting that even though she has to obey Prospero, she still wants to kind of rebel from like gender conformity. She wants to still be different, even though she's never actually really experienced that before, and she still wants to break away from it. So yeah, it's a really important theme.
And I think there are going to be some critics that say, that Miranda's desire to get married straight away, and that's kind of the main objective for her, makes her weaker, but the fact that this is her choice and something that she wants, I feel makes her a strong female character in many ways. And because of that, I really like her. And I think those moments of comedy, particularly from the adaptation that is on YouTube, presents her as a really funny character and able to have a command moments on the stage as well. Yeah, so we'll leave it there. Hopefully you've got a greater understanding of these characters and just understand power in a bit of a different way, because I think when we think about terms in English, sometimes we can think, oh, well, if we look at the dictionary definition, power means this. But actually our job is to think about and brainstorm all of the different ways that it comes across within a text and how that links with character and writer's intentions. So we'll leave it there, and we'll be starting on a different theme with you next week. And yeah, hope you enjoy your weekend. Okay, bye, Miss Pierce.
Bye, thank you.
Bye.